And last but absolutely not least, adequate parks and open space. We know it's important. We know our constituents think it's important. We think it's important. And, you know, as a partner with the Parks Master Plan that we have adopted, this, you know, capital improvement plan for parks and implementation measures, you know, that's huge for the city to have this on our plan this year. So let's go with Eric.
Yes, that is huge. I'm reminded of the pretty green circles on the west side plan and the parks plan, and which are beautiful circles, but turning those pretty green conceptual circles into actual park that doesn't become pavement or something else, that gives a place for the children and families that will live in those new areas, a place to go, is going to be really important. So this will be a hard task. The money part's always the hardest part, whether it's the form of a bond measure or tapping into the costs and fees imposed upon developers at the time of construction, and then sequencing all that so that we have the money and time to buy the land before the development's in, so the development doesn't get put in before the parks can not be there. It's hard, and there's a lot of advanced planning and effort that needs to go into that to make sure the parks actually happen, because it's really easy to put the green circles on the maps, but it's harder to actually get the parks. So focusing on the capital improvement plan, coordinating, you know, I also see a number of bonds coming down the pipe for the community, whether it's the public safety and community health facility that we were talking about earlier. The sheriff had one recently, you know, the parks one, maybe there'll be one for affordable housing. I'm not sure. There's a lot. So we have to be strategic in our sequencing as well, to the extent we're going to the community for more dollars. Particularly in light of COVID, where people may not have the ability to say yes as much as they used to, those kinds of things. But it's probably going to be some form of bond measure for parks. I think that is the right thing to do. And we need to be as proactive as we can be to secure funding for the pretty green circles to make them a reality, is my feeling.
Thanks, Eric. Jessica?
I really like this project. I'm glad we're looking to make the plan a reality. I am also glad just to recognize that city staff is actively looking for opportunities now, and I've appreciated them, you know, so we're not waiting until we have this implementation plan done to try to identify properties when they become available. So thank you to staff for doing that. Yeah, I think that's what I had to say.
Thanks. Tim?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Just continue my arrow critique. The options analysis could be stated in a more actionable fashion. Just to be consistent.
Yes, thank you, Councilor. Well, we will come up with something. I appreciate it. It's important that we get those pieces clear. So your feedback is well received. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to loop back to the last thing that we discussed, I forgot to mention this, that there was a suggestion in the public comments to include the word resilience in that the environmental sustainability community category. And I think resilience is a very powerful word, and we might want to consider adding that or exchanging that for sustainable, because it does have a very tangible meaning. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Mark?
Thank you. I want to amplify on what Eric was saying, and it's consistent with
some stuff that Rachel and I have had the opportunity to talk about, which is acquisition of easements and open space land is absolutely the first thing we need to do. We can develop them later, but if we don't have the land now, whether it's the greenways or the little parks places, we're not going to have the option to develop them. So I do think that working with parks to get access to their current SDC funding is going to be really important, and that's partly a political task to make sure that us as councilors make sure that they as park district board members know that that's now's the time to be working together to acquire land. What Jessica said, the fact that staff has already been looking for opportunities is heartening. I like it. I think Rand Road is a neat opportunity. It's comes into play here to some degree. So I don't have any changes to how number 16 is presented here, but I really hope that we can clear some things to allow staff to actually start nicking away at this. There were a lot of comments in the comment book about different parts of this as well. So I think that it puts our activity where our words were when we did the master plan. So I think that it's also important to actually do these things as opposed to just have a pretty plan. So that's it.
Thanks, Mar. Gladys?
I will echo everything that my peers have said. I think they've all said it so beautifully. I just want to also mention my appreciation for parks in general, especially now more than ever. Being able to just take my kids, close to where we live to the park and, making sure that we're safe, of course, but just to be able to see them sitting on the swing or just to go walk somewhere. I feel like absolutely, I will admit that I've taken parks for granted, so very thankful that we have them in our community.
Thanks, Gladys. Megan?
I want to say I've been really appreciative of the work staff is doing at the operational level on all of this, including, improving communication and partnerships over the last year or two. I think that, this actual project is obviously a really important and great next step to have a game plan to direct our work and the city's work, and is critical to, grant funding and other funding acquisition efforts. So it's clearly the next step, and I'm glad we're doing it.
Great. Yeah, I agree with, I think if we have something that I will call a shadow plat of the west side, because that's where we wanted to add the additional parks that aren't, areas that aren't built out already, which is just something like, okay, Sherman Street's going to go all the way through, or May Street goes all the way through, or this street won't go all the way through. This is going to be a bigger street. This is going to be a smaller street. Then we can start to identify where we can put these green spots, and we can actually start talking to landowners. So I think that's critical. I think we need the money to do it, whether it's us or SDC money that Parks and Recs have acquired. But to partner with Parks and Rec on that is critical. And we need to identify those spots, because the price is just going to continue to rise, and we need to do something about it sooner than later. Just like we did with Rand Road, we're identifying these areas, and we need to move on them if we possibly can. And I know it's difficult with COVID. Some of the incomes that the city had year before last, we don't quite have back yet, and we probably won't for at least another year or maybe even 2 years. But we'll come back, and we need to be thinking of the future on these things. So really important. Mark?
Yeah, I failed to underline another thing Eric talked about, which is a bond measure, and 2022 is going to be, a high vote turnout election, and I think we should start talking about it. My favorite daydream is some combination capital bond that would be for land acquisition, for housing, and for open space, possibly other things. So, but this isn't the time to talk about what that looks like. But I think that just putting it on the radar that it's an important tool to get a bunch of these different things we're talking about implemented, and just keeping that on the radar.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Mark, on that. I think that it's never too early to start talking about, if we're going to have some kind of a bond measure, what would it be for, and how would it look, and what partners do we have that would help us with that? So I think that might be something we would need to talk about in the context of at least the parks, and maybe adding some other things to that within the next year, some kind of discussion. Rachel, do you see that would come under this parks here, what you've got down here?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mayor. And a number of councilors have hit on it. The city does not collect a parks SDC, and that is typically what would be used to acquire parkland that adds to capacity. So and that can provide, be a good source of matching funds for grants, but the city does not collect. So we really will need to partner in order to get to accomplish our goals. We really will need to partner on that. So I appreciate all the recognition there. The purpose of the capital improvement plan is to identify the list of projects and then have a conversation about where the funding gaps are.
So the financial analysis would be the portion where we would talk about partnering with Parks and Rec, whether we would have a bond, those kind of things would come into that conversation.
Right. Where are the gaps? Where are the financial gaps?
Right.
And what are the options for filling them?
Okay, great.